Hey everybody, so today we're going to cover chapter 4, elasticity of demand. So what is elasticity? Right, we can define it as the responsiveness of one variable to a change in another. So for example, right, we're going to see with the price elasticity of demand, this is the response in QD to a change in P, right? It's the response in quantity demanded to a change in the price, right? So that leads us that this is exactly what the price elasticity of demand is. Right, and we denote this as ED, right? And the formula for it is really nice. It's just ED is equal to the percent change in QD over the percent change in price. Right, so for example, let me move this up just a little bit. Right, so for example, we have the price of Tropicana orange juice, I'm just going to put OJ, increases by 20%. Right, this leads to QD to decrease by 30%, right? And I'm just making these numbers up. The numbers are going to be given to you, right? So we want to calculate the price elasticity of demand, right? So this is really nice because we can just use the formula and plug in the numbers. So ED is equal to, what's our percent change in QD? It's minus 30, right? Negative 30 over a price increase of 20%. Right, so this gives me negative 0.5. Or sorry, this is 1.5. Negative 1.5. Right, so we want to notice that this is a more elastic response. Right, and we know that because this number is a bigger negative. Right, this is a pretty big negative. Bigger negative, so we can say that since the elasticity is negative 1.5, we know that it's a more elastic response, right? So because the price increased by 20%, the quantity demanded decreased by 30%, and we consider that an elastic response, right? So Tropicana has more of an elastic demand. Right, so comparing this with the second example, right, so we can say that the price of insulin increased by also 20%, right, and how did that affect our quantity demanded? Well, in this case, our QD only went down by 5%. Right, because insulin is needed for people with diabetes, right? So even if the price increases, there's not going to be a big decrease in the quantity demanded because people need it, right? So we can do the same thing and calculate our ED is equal to, so we have a decrease in quantity demanded of 5%. Actually, I'll leave the percent out to match what I did above, right? And then increase in price 20. This gives me negative 0.25 of my price elasticity of demand, right? So we can say that this is more inelastic, right? A more inelastic response. I know it's a little cut out. Let me just scoot it over. Right, it's a more inelastic response because this is a smaller negative. right? So basically what this is saying is even though the price of insulin increased by 20%, we know that only 5% less people bought it, right? Or only 5% less people, bought the good, right? Because insulin is needed, right? So then we get an elasticity of demand of negative 0.25, and it's more of an inelastic response, right? Compared to Tropicana, because here we have negative 1.5, here we have negative 0.25, right? So there's a general rule that will help you, which will tie into the examples that we just did, right? So the general rule basically is if it's easy to find substitutes, the good has elastic demand, right? And we see that above with the Tropicana, the price of Tropicana increases by 20%, leads to a quantity demand decrease 30%, right? We see that here. This is a pretty elastic response. We know that because Tropicana orange juice is very specific, so it has a lot of like substitutes, right? Instead of Tropicana, you could buy, like, what are the other brands? I forget at the moment, right? But any other brand of orange juice. Whereas with insulin, there's really only one insulin you can get, right? You either get insulin or you don't get insulin. So that's why insulin has less substitutes, so it has inelastic demand, whereas Tropicana has a lot of substitutes, so there's elastic demand. Right, so just to show this on graphs. There we go. Right, so let's draw my elastic demand. Right, I'm also going to have my inelastic demand right here, side by side, so you can see. Right, so when a good has elastic demand, our elastic demand curve is a lot flatter, right? So it's like kind of like this, right? Whereas, actually, let me label P and Q so it's more clear. Right, whereas inelastic demand is more vertical, so we have something like this. Right, so let's look at a change in the price in both, right? We'll start with elastic, right? So say we started here, right, PA, right? And then we have like a very small price increase of an elastic good, right, PB. So this is like a small increase, right? So what can we say happened to our quantity, change in quantity demanded, right? So QA went from here to here, right? So you can see that this is pretty big, right? So this is big and this is small. Right, so again, this is showing you the same concept from above, right? For a good that has elastic demand, if there's a small change in price, right, there's a big change in the quantity demanded. So the price went up just a little, price of orange juice went up a little bit, a lot of people stopped buying it. Right, we can show the same thing for inelastic demand. So say we have the price at A, right, and then we had a pretty big price increase to PB, right? Let's label our quantity demanded A, quantity demanded at B. Right, so this shows you when there was a big increase in the price, right? What happened here? There was a small decrease in quantity demanded, right? So this is the elastic version is our Tropicana example, inelastic is our insulin example. So right, if the price of insulin increases, no matter how much, the same amount of people, almost the same amount of people are still going to have to be buying it, right? Because they need it, right? So again, think about the general rule, keep that in mind. If it's easy to find substitutes, the good has more of an elastic demand, right? If it's harder to find substitutes, it's more likely to be inelastic. Hopefully this helped explain the concept of elasticity a little bit more.